Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Today, I'd just like to speak for a moment or two about ways of learning. Now, I have to share something with you which you might find quite surprising. Even though I'm a teacher, if you simply hand me a book and say, okay, Teacher Joseph, learn this book, and then we'll do an exam on it, then it's not going to work. I'm not the kind of person who can learn from dry, cold facts. And in fact, I can tell you that academia is a real turn off for me, unless, of course, it has some practical use which I can bring alive in my personal life. Now, I know many of you feel the same way because many of you in our English classes, you share with me information. Most of you have reached a point where you just, well, you can't go any further. Perhaps you've been learning from books and you reach that point where you think, I know all this stuff, but I'm still not communicating well. I have a good vocabulary, but I can't really use it. And then there's others who tell me that they just have some kind of a block. They look at the book, they look at the teacher, and they think, this is absolutely frightening, and I can't move forward. Now, if any of those ideas are resonating with you, I have some good news. And that's the fact that you don't have to be struggling if you feel that way. I was talking to someone the other day who was involved in a car accident and it left him with some brain abnormalities. And this person was telling me that they're unable to function or learn in the ways that other people can. And that makes learning for them twice as difficult. There's all kinds of reasons why today you might not be able just to sit down with a book and learn it. The most obvious reason might be the fact that you have a family. When you have a family, it's very hard to get the space and the time to sit down and study. And for many of you listening today, that time might only come very late at night once you put the kids to bed. And when that happens, you're kind of left thinking, you know what? I only have half an hour now before I go to bed. And, well, I don't really have time to be studying English because I should really be preparing dinner for tomorrow or catching up on emails or doing that last minute thing for work that I didn't do before I left the office. There's all kinds of distractions and all kinds of things these days, especially for those of us who work at home, because our personal life just becomes some kind of extension of our professional life. Now, let me just share some information with you on different ways that you can see learning. Well, first of all, the first and most important thing is you need to change your outlook on what your expectations are for learning. Many of you book lessons with me. You come and talk to me, and then after a few lessons, you tell me, you know what? I really don't have time for this. I would really like it if I had, but I don't. And the lessons are placed on the back burner. And that's how we say in English when they move down the list of priorities. There's others who try hard, but they put their English lessons in between business meetings, or they catch that hour at work. In many cases, your employer may be paying for English lessons, so you actually get an hour away from your desk to have a lesson. My point is that you're trying very hard in order to move forward with your English. Now, if we leave English purely at an academic level, where English is something far away from you that you must pick up and put into your brain, with that kind of outlook, you really aren't going to get very far. It is true that you may learn English in the same way as you learned to use the computer, or in the same way as you learned whatever job you do or whatever your career is. But it doesn't bring it alive. In fact, if anything, it leaves it at the lowest possible level, something to perhaps call upon academically when you're in a bar in a foreign country and you want to ask for a beer. In order to advance with your English in a much quicker and more dynamic way, you really need to tune in to your passion. For those of you who've had English lessons with me, a common question that I ask many of you is, do you feel joyful when you're learning English? And that question alone is enough to start yourself questioning whether English does indeed bring you happiness or joy. And if the answer is no, I don't feel joyful when I'm learning, English doesn't bring me happiness, then you need to review that. And you have a perfect right to ask why. When I started to learn languages, and this is going back many, many years, books featured quite heavily. Perhaps because I was younger, perhaps because I remembered books from school, or maybe just because the internet wasn't so widely available as it is today. At that time, I can say books almost certainly did bring me joy. What about you? What happens when you're reading that English book? I'd like you to take maybe just 5 minutes writing down some of the feelings you have when you're learning. Perhaps you feel a bit of anxiety, you feel sadness, could be you're feeling joy as well. But in those moments where you don't actually get anywhere, you read the book, you hear the children crying, you think, ooh, I'm not sure I did very well there, but I'll revisit the book again later. And of course, you don't. As well as your joy level, you end up in this vicious circle of trying to catch the time that you lost, which of course in many cases doesn't come. For me personally, one thing that I learned quite early on is that one of the only ways that I'm able to learn anything is when I'm giving that thing to somebody else. In other words, if I really want to learn, I need to be teaching someone the very same subject. That makes it much easier. I can see my own growth. I can see someone else's growth. And because my passion is in teaching and in communication, then I'm able to see the benefit and the results. When you're doing something only for yourself, well, it can be a little bit selfish. And it also can, well, it isn't always something which brings you joy. But if you know you're bringing someone else joy, especially if it's an act of love or an act of charity, then it can indeed be very satisfying. In these days where less and less of us seem to have any social skills, to give you free time to set up a YouTube channel or even a personal blog about learning a particular language is something which is seen as unusual. In a world where language learning is reduced down to a commodity and a book, someone offering something free just for self-reflection or even to help themselves learn is viewed very much with suspicion. And I think that's really sad because it's a very natural thing for middle-aged people to do. After all, for men, when we reach the age of 40, or in my case, 50, the pangs of fatherhood kick in. And if you don't have kids, you begin to realize that you're very quickly becoming everyone's father. Younger people view you as old, and as an old person, you're supposed to have wisdom to pass down to the next generation. That seems to be a natural and automatic thing, and that's helped me a lot in my journey of learning different things. Whether it's language, whether it's a function, there's always people who are just starting out on their journey who need you and your wisdom. Now, of course, I'm not saying that all of you need to run away, sit on a mountain for 3 months, and then declare yourself teachers. Not everyone is a teacher, and for me personally, it's very much my way. It's who I am. It's my personality. But my point is this: you need to discover who you are and then bring language learning to that thing. Perhaps you're a writer. Maybe you love writing, in which case you could begin to write a book in English. Now, that sounds really, really frightening, doesn't it? Begin with a kid's book, a kid's novel. Perhaps you're someone who loves art, who loves creativity. Well, you can easily read about art or even write about art. I remember a lovely student that I had some years ago now, and that she loved dressmaking, and she wanted to share with the world how she could make dresses, and making dresses brought her a lot of joy on YouTube. And as a result, learning English became kind of easy and seamless, almost without difficulty. Now, if you compare that to sitting down with a book, staring at it for half an hour with a cup of coffee, casually glancing at your phone for the next text message to come in, you can see the difference there. If you love social media, get yourself some friends to text in a second language. Find people who have things in common with you using apps like Tandem, HelloTalk, and italki also has a hashtag which is all about language exchange. There's plenty of opportunities. Learning doesn't have to come through a book. We've all been in situations where we've sat there listening to a teacher and we've thought, this really isn't working for me. And when that thing gets personal, it can become very stressful. I've been in situations before in language learning where the teacher seems to seamlessly and easily talk, and as they're talking and she picks on people to answer her questions, I found myself stressed. My mind goes blank, and I think, ooh, how is it that all of these other people are able to answer all of her questions, and I just can't seem to connect with what's happening here? I don't understand the words in the book. I understood them when I read them, but when she comes to me in the class and asks me to speak, it's embarrassing. I just clam up. If these things are familiar to you, it doesn't mean that you can't learn. It just means that your way of learning needs some examination. Now, as I've been sharing with you today, my thing is taking the information and giving it out. Because when I do that, I have to review the information a second time and I have to learn it to teach it. So the next time you're learning something new, perhaps you can decide how you're going to do that. And the most important thing to learn is what makes you happy, what raises your energy and brings about passion. Once you know what that is, and once you bring English learning to that thing, then I can assure you that you're going to be a very happy and joyful learner. So, this goes much deeper than simply buying an English book. It's asking yourself, who am I? What's my natural gifts? And how can I bring English to those today? Well, that's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed this. Take care. Bye.